to Mesa Verde. By the time we got there, I knew something happened because the car was leaning a little lopsided. It was still running. I think I had to stop altogether about 4 times in the garage for minor repairs. From Mesa Verde we went up to Delta, Accord, where Marie's uncle and aunt lived on a nice ranch. I enjoyed that very much. And then we started going home, and just halfway to Colorado, there's a little tunnel on the main highway, and of course we got stuck right in the middle of the tunnel. I turned on the light, blew the horn, and the car in back of me couldn't help but have to push me through. Pushed me through, and at the other end I hitched a ride back with some coal miners to the nearest town, asked for a tow cart, had it pulled in, and they had to fix the timing device had broken. We stayed there overnight, and the next day we kept on going, and eventually got to Salt Lake City, and then across the Salt Flats, and 11 miles outside of Wendover, Utah, the car again broke down. This time, however, I expected what was wrong. I told the garage owner in Wendover what it was. He went out with me, fixed it, and charged me $1 a mile. In other words, it cost me $12. And then I went on back home. By the time I got home, I knew that one of the main problems with the car was that 1 or 2 of the leaves on the front spring was cracked. But working in the PG&E laboratory, I had access to a hoist and all kind of tools, and I bought a spring and fixed it myself. And I used that old car then for another year or 2 before I finally managed to get a better car. Well, in nothing new there, came 47, and our oldest son Bernard was born, and I was still doing corrosion engineering. In fact, while Marie was due for delivery, I was working in Rio Vista, and the neighbors brought over a cowbell to tell Marie that if anything happens, ring the bell, we will be over and help you. Well, it wasn't necessary. Marie went to the hospital, and Bernard came, everything went in good shape. Then 47, well, I kept on going. We lived in a little house in El Cerrito, and I was getting a little restless. Corrosion engineering was interesting, but there was no future in it. At that time, the head of the laboratory couldn't see me transferring into a different section where I wanted to go, and I couldn't see myself staying in the same place. So along came an offer from the Lawrence Radiation Laboratory, part of the university, and they needed a power engineer. And one of my former associates, Carl Grauer, had a job. So I talked with him, and he said, yes, that's fine, we need a man. So I started in the Lawrence Radiation Laboratory. Very interesting field. It was the largest research laboratory, research in high nuclear physics. My job from the very beginning to the very end was to take care of the power distribution. The group of power engineers consisted of anywhere between 4 and 9, and we managed to provide power for all the laboratories. Everything from outlet lights, convenience outlets, to the big heavy DC generators which were used to provide the power for the magnets. There was the 180-inch cyclotron, I think that's what they called it, 180-inch cyclotron. Then they had a linear accelerator, a synchrotron, and then the Bevadan started to be built. Everything was working. Oh, there was always something going on. And of course all these accelerators needed power. And all the accelerators of course had a big magnet, so they all needed direct current. Machinery was hard to get, and I developed a system of using used machinery. I was getting quite a name of finding used machinery all over the United States. It gave me a chance to travel a little bit, and we had a real good assortment of old machinery. Some of it was even donated from the Navy, and we had some very good electricians, so we managed to keep the lab adequately powered with used machinery. And it wasn't until quite late in the 50s before we kind of slowed down on used machinery and started getting new equipment. But then most of the research equipment was planned to operate as such only a matter of a few years. And if I could find a machine for, let's say, half the price of a new one that was in still usable condition, well, 5 years, any machine that's overhauled will probably give 5 years service. So we ended up with a real good selection of old machinery, some real old, built in 1920 and thereabouts. But the laboratory kept on operating, increased, was famous. We had something like 7 or 8 Nobel Prize winners there. All I had to do with the whole thing is provide the power, see that they always have power when they needed it. It was interesting, I liked it. So, still now down in 48 when I started. Came 49, I met Charlie Park, another electronics engineer, who also was interested in laboratory work. And my having worked in a gold mine years ago, we got together and went rock hunting down in the area of Barstow and Baker. I kind of liked getting out there. Hunting for animals I didn't care too much for, but I liked to get out, and rock hunting was the best way of getting experience, and the experience of going out into the hills. And I kept up that hobby for the rest of, well, until today. Then nothing very important happened in 1949, except right about a month after I started in the radiation laboratory. Oh no, that was in 48. Chris came along, and in 49 the rock hunting trip. In 1950 we started vacation trips to the ranch in Colorado. Every summer almost we went back there and took a different route, and on the route we invariably stayed in national parks for a day or so. So I came to know many of the state and national parks in the Southwest. At the ranch, of course, the children liked the animals and the horses, and I learned a little bit about cowboy work. I enjoyed it very much. So every summer we planned it. That was 50. 51 the same thing. 52 again the same thing. Then in 53 we had been looking around for a larger house and talking about what to do when we finally decided we are going to build it right on the same lot. We were living in that old little house, and there was plenty of land around the house, so I started to design the details. Marie had the overall plan, I designed the details, made the regular blueprints. Then I had developed a hernia while working at a ranch, so I decided to have that taken care of before I go into the physical part of building the house. So that was in 53. Late in 53 then we started the necessary excavations, pouring the foundations, and then I started working. In 54 Marie took, or Carl was here by then, he came in 53, so in 54 then he was about a year and 2-3 months, and Marie took the children to Colorado while I stayed at home to work on the house. By the fall of 54 I had the frame up and the roof on, and I could close in the house during the winter so I could work on the inside. In January of 55, the outside stucco wall went on. Practically all the work which I could possibly do myself without any machinery or help, I did myself. Stucco work, of course, was done by a professional, and so was the fireplace and chimney. Came 55 and 56. Every evening I came home, I started working on the house, and I think I made one more trip to the ranch, had to get a little vacation in. And finally in 57, the house was well enough along so we could move in. In 57, mother and my sister Annie had been rather impatient that I didn't visit them, so I persuaded them to come over here. And I think I paid them half the trip. Well, that was a beautiful visit. And so my mother saw the house, saw California, and Annie, of course, the same. The house, we were living in it, in the new one, but of course it wasn't by no means completely finished. And we got some contributions from my family. My mother-in-law gave us quite a bit in the way of dishwasher. And so little by little we got the house in good shape. We had a few parties to celebrate the fact that I finished the house. 58, 59, not new. 60, my mother insisted I visit her, so I went to Germany on a trip. Went out there, rented a car, traveled all over Germany and I think Switzerland and France a little bit. Came back. All that time, of course, by now I had, ever since 1953 or 4, I had taken over the job of supervisor of electrical engineering. In other words, I was in charge of the power engineers. And in 1960 and from there on we had 9 engineers. The lab was pretty big now and required a lot of power engineering, so I had a very interesting and responsible job. For vacation, for enjoyment, for vacation tours or so, Charlie Park and I would go rock hunting. Sometimes we combined it with trips with the children for some of the places in California. In 64 and 65 I made several trips to the East Coast. I also made another trip to Germany. Then in 67 the laboratory started to become less active. In fact, we got a character in who was hired as axeman. In other words, he was to lay off. And he did really cut the power group into half. I threatened to resign rather than work with him, but he was laid off before it came that far. But the lab didn't, it slowed down. We designed a big lab which eventually was built back at Batavia near Chicago. We didn't get it in California. The work which we did became less and less interesting. We were transferred into plant engineering as a group, and there of course we had very little to do with the real research part of the laboratory. So I just carried on. In 1972 Marie and I made a trip to Spain and Germany, and I don't know what other countries we went to. That's the first time Marie was in Germany and met, some of my relatives. In 73, I decided to retire. I was 64, and there was a little rumor about layoff. So I figured, I'm within 1 year of retiring, I might as well retire and save the job for somebody else. I retired, got severance pay, which paid for a trip to the Holy Land. That was a very interesting trip. We went to Istanbul, which is a beautiful, interesting city, kind of dirty but interesting. And from there we took a flight down to Izmir to see the old city of Ephesus. Then we went to Cyprus. From there we went to Beirut. and did some sightseeing in Beirut, very interesting. And